Nothing is wrong with you for wanting answers and still feeling strangely unprepared when they finally begin to appear. Most people assume that wanting truth is the same as being ready for it, but those two states live very far apart. Desire is often born from discomfort, from impatience, from the mind's hope that a new insight will finally dissolve tension. Readiness, however, is quieter and heavier. It has less to do with curiosity and much more to do with capacity. There are truths that cannot arrive early, not because they are hidden, but because the inner structure required to hold them has not yet formed. Life does not withhold clarity to punish you. It withholds it because clarity is destabilizing when the nervous system is still organized around protection rather than presence. Wanting truth asks for information. Readiness asks whether your system can remain regulated when something familiar dissolves. The difference between the two is emotional maturity, not intelligence. You can read the right words for years and feel nothing, and then one day, the same words land with weight, not because they changed, but because you did. Readiness develops invisibly. It is built through moments of restraint you didn't celebrate, through pauses where you didn't react the way you used to, through discomfort you stayed with instead of escaping. It forms when you stop demanding immediate relief from confusion and begin to tolerate uncertainty without panic. This is why life often feels silent right before deeper understanding emerges. Silence is not absence, it is space. And space is required for truth to settle without shattering you. Many people misinterpret this silence as stagnation, as being forgotten, as being stuck. In reality, it is often the sign that something inside is reorganizing at a level deeper than conscious thought. When clarity finally arrives, it does not feel like excitement. It feels like recognition. It feels oddly calm, almost understated, because the work of preparation has already been done beneath awareness. This truth did not appear because you asked loudly enough. It appeared because you could finally carry it without collapsing or defending against it. Before that moment, truth remains filtered, not blocked, but distorted. The filter is identity, the story you need to believe about who you are in order to feel safe. The ego does not exist to reveal truth. It exists to preserve coherence. It protects old narratives not out of malice, but out of survival. Anything that threatens those narratives is experienced as danger, regardless of how accurate it might be. This is why defensive identities reject insight before it is even examined. Truth becomes invisible when being right feels safer than being honest. Many realizations fail to land not because they are false, but because accepting them would require an identity to soften, and softness feels like exposure to a system trained on control. But there comes a moment when identity loosens, not through force, but through fatigue. Maintaining the old story takes more energy than letting it go. Humility enters quietly here, not as self-criticism, but as openness. A willingness to not know who you are for a moment without rushing to replace the label. When identity stops needing to be right, perception widens. Truth does not argue its way in. It arrives when the door is no longer barricaded. This shift cannot happen without emotional readiness. Unstable emotions distort truth into threat. When the nervous system is flooded, even gentle realizations feel like attacks. Calm is often misunderstood as passivity, but in reality, calm is regulation. It is the state in which insight can be received without triggering defense. The nervous system is the true gatekeeper of understanding. If it senses overwhelm, it closes access, not because you are unworthy, but because survival takes precedence over clarity. This is why chaos delays revelation. During periods of intense anxiety, grief, or inner turbulence, the system is focused on stabilization. Truth that would otherwise liberate you is postponed because it would destabilize you further. Only when emotional demands soften does truth begin to feel safe. Only when you stop asking insight to comfort you does it begin to speak clearly. Truth does not soothe first, it reorganizes first. And reorganization requires stability. Resistance fills the space between instability and readiness. Resistance is rarely obvious. It does not usually look like refusal. More often, it disguises itself as distraction, as logic, as endless analysis, as busyness, as waiting for the perfect moment. Resistance is not laziness. It is avoidance with good reasons attached. It protects you from the immediate weight of truth because truth asks something of you. It does not simply inform, it removes exits. This is why truth often feels heavy before it feels freeing. There is a quiet moment when avoidance runs out of energy, not with drama, but with exhaustion. You stop running not because you were forced to, but because there is nowhere left to escape to that feels convincing. In that moment, honesty no longer feels dangerous. It feels relieving. The thing you feared turns out to be lighter than the effort of avoiding it. Truth does not force itself on you. It waits until running becomes more painful than standing still. When truth finally arrives, it often reveals itself as sudden, like an instant realization, a sharp internal click. But this suddenness is an illusion. There is almost always a long internal buildup that goes unnoticed. Subtle emotional integrations, small values shifting quietly, unprocessed grief completing itself. The unconscious preparing in silence, while the conscious mind believes nothing is happening. Timing feels external only because the preparation was internal. This is why people say, "I wasn't ready before," without fully realizing how literal that statement is. You were still becoming the person who could live with the consequences of knowing. Truth is not late. It arrives exactly when you no longer need it to rescue you. It arrives when you can live with it without asking it to solve your life for you. There is a price to truth that is rarely spoken aloud. Truth removes excuses. It dissolves comfortable illusions that once softened responsibility. It exposes where agency was postponed, projected, or hidden behind stories that made stagnation feel reasonable. This is why truth can feel dangerous. Illusions provide emotional shelter. They allow you to remain unchanged while feeling justified. Truth takes that shelter away. Responsibility steps in where fantasy used to live. At first, this feels like loss. But responsibility is not punishment. It is agency returning to its rightful place. The fear is not of truth itself. The fear is of who you will have to become once excuses are gone. This is why truth waits. It does not arrive until you are willing to live differently because of it, not just understand it. By the time truth reaches this stage, it no longer arrives as instruction. It arrives as confirmation. The unconscious recognized readiness long before awareness did. This is why certain messages feel familiar when you encounter them now. Not new, not shocking, just precise. They do not tell you what to do. They acknowledge where you already are. Searching begins to dissolve not because all questions are answered, but because the frantic need for answers fades. A calm certainty replaces urgency. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about orientation. If this reached you now, it is not here to teach you something you lacked. It is here to confirm something that is already formed. You did not receive this truth because you demanded it. You received it because you finally had the inner space to hold it without breaking. After truth is accepted, something subtle begins to change in the way you relate to your own inner world. The urgency that once drove you starts to dissolve, not because everything has been resolved, but because the internal struggle that demanded resolution has quieted. You no longer feel the same pressure to chase insight, to extract meaning from every experience, or to constantly check whether you are moving in the right direction. That pressure belonged to a phase where clarity was something you hoped would arrive from outside. Now, clarity feels less like a destination and more like a state you return to when resistance is absent. The mind stops scanning for confirmation because something deeper has already settled. What once felt like a restless search now reveals itself as preparation. and when preparation is complete, the search naturally loses its grip. This is why truth, at this stage, feels less like discovery and more like recognition. Earlier, insight demanded effort. You had to wrestle with ideas, analyze them, test them against fear and hope. Truth felt external, something to acquire or defend. Now it feels internal. It does not persuade you, it resonates. It does not challenge your identity, it passes through what remains after identity has softened. This shift often goes unnoticed because it lacks drama. There is no dramatic breakthrough, no surge of emotion. Instead, there is a quiet alignment between what you understand and what you can live. The unconscious has already integrated what the conscious mind is only now acknowledging. Awareness is simply catching up to work that has been unfolding silently for a long time. Looking back, you may notice how non-linear this process was. There were moments of clarity followed by confusion, periods where you felt close to understanding only to feel lost again. This was not failure or regression. It was refinement. Each cycle stripped away another layer of illusion, another attachment to how things were supposed to feel or make sense. Each return to uncertainty increased your capacity to remain present without demanding immediate answers. Over time, something important happened. The internal argument with reality began to fade. Not because life became easier, but because resistance lost its purpose. This is where truth becomes sustainable. Sustainable truth does not excite you temporarily, it stabilizes you. It becomes the ground beneath you rather than an idea you have to keep revisiting. There is often a quiet grief woven into the stage, one that is easy to miss. It is not sadness in the usual sense, but a gentle mourning for the illusions that once offered comfort, for the identities that once felt necessary, for the version of you that needed the search itself to feel alive. This grief does not pull you backward. It completes something. You are not losing meaning. You are shedding noise. Clarity does not simplify life in the way fantasy promises. It cleans it. It removes unnecessary struggle, unnecessary self-negotiation, unnecessary explanation. You begin to see how much energy was once spent trying to justify feelings, avoid responsibility, or maintain stories that softened reality. When those stories fall away, that energy returns, not as productivity, but as presence. Presence is often misunderstood as a technique, something you practice deliberately. In reality, presence is what remains when resistance is gone. When you stop arguing with what is, attention settles on its own. You are here not because you force yourself to be, but because there is no longer a more compelling place to escape to. This is why the end of searching feels like relief rather than stagnation. Many people fear that if they stop searching, they will stop growing. In truth, constant searching often delays growth by keeping attention fixed on what is missing instead of what is already forming. Growth continues quietly when searching ends. It simply no longer announces itself as urgency. Your relationship with discomfort also changes here. Discomfort no longer signals danger. It becomes information. You can feel it without immediately reacting, without rushing to fix or suppress it. This capacity is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. Truth no longer destabilizes you because it no longer threatens your sense of self. Identity is no longer being used as armor. Responsibility, too, takes on a different quality. Earlier, it may have felt heavy, even oppressive. Now it feels grounding. You are no longer waiting for permission to live differently, nor are you negotiating with circumstances as if they need to agree with you first. Responsibility becomes the place where agency quietly returns. Another subtle shift appears in how little you need to convince others. When truth is still fragile, it seeks validation. It wants agreement to feel real. When truth is integrated, it does not require witnesses. It does not shrink in silence or expand through praise. It simply exists. Your questions change as well. They lose their frantic edge. They are no longer driven by fear of missing something essential. They become quieter, more precise, more oriented toward alignment than identity. Discernment replaces urgency. You no longer absorb every idea that sounds profound. You sense what resonates and allow the rest to pass without resistance. This is not closed-mindedness. It is selectivity born of stability. Meaning no longer needs to be collected. It is already present. This is why truth, at this stage, appears as confirmation rather than instruction. It does not tell you who to become. It reflects who you are already becoming. A calm certainty replaces searching, not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about orientation. You know what matters and what does not. You know where your energy belongs and what you no longer need to carry. This certainty is quiet. It does not argue with doubt or eliminate fear entirely. It coexists with uncertainty without being disturbed by it. This is not detachment from life, but engagement without entanglement.
Time itself begins to feel different. The urgency to arrive somewhere fades, not because you have arrived, but because you are no longer chasing an imagined version of yourself. You live from where you are, rather than toward who you think you should be. Life feels less like a problem to solve and more like a process to participate in. Truth does not remove difficulty. It removes unnecessary resistance to difficulty, and that changes everything in subtle ways. Silence, once threatening or empty, becomes spacious. It turns into a place of integration rather than absence. You no longer fill it. Truth continues to unfold, but it no longer arrives as shock. It arrives as familiarity. You recognize it because you are already living in alignment with it. This is why the final recognition feels like something you already knew, not intellectually, but somatically. Your body recognizes it. Your nervous system remains calm in its presence. There is no internal argument. This is readiness completed. Not perfection, not enlightenment. Capacity. Capacity to live with clarity without demanding certainty. To hold responsibility without self-punishment. To face reality without collapsing or escaping. If this reached you now, it did not arrive to instruct you. It arrived to acknowledge something already true. The work that mattered most happened quietly, beneath awareness, over time. What remains is not a new identity, but less attachment to identity. Not a final answer, but the end of frantic questioning. Truth did not come because you demanded it. It came because you could finally live with what it reveals.